All right, let's go.
I have this thing. I think it's on. I think it's seeing both of us, right? Gallery view. Here we go. Perfect. Okay. And so, hi everyone. This is Jay from Interview Query, and you're listening to the Data Stream podcast. It's a show where I talk to data scientists that work on interesting projects with practical applications to the real world. Today, I am talking to Ivan. He is my coworker at formerly at Nextdoor. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks. It's cool to be here.
Yeah. It is cool, isn't it?
Yeah. Guess so. You more or less you forced me on this, but well, whatever.
Exactly. This is my excuse for being able to catch up with my friends. I realize now it's just like
given this social distancing. I get it. It's
exactly.
Cool. That's all. It's nice to see you sometimes,
I feel like it should be more normalized now to just randomly call people, like just be able to go up and dial like anyone's phone number. But at the same time, I feel like it's still hard to just put in that first effort to like remember to do it, right? Like, because if you're at work, you can just go up and talk to someone, tap them on the shoulder. It's like forced socialization, and it works well. But dude, ever since I started Interview Query and quitting, I think that also like contributed to like realizing that there is a part of you that is now not having to force to go to like just generally a crowded area, like work. But now
keeping in touch with people is hard, man. It's actually it takes a lot of effort. I struggle with that too sometimes.
Yeah, especially now. But I mean, I guess because you're currently working at Nextdoor. Still, and
so I guess we know each other from Nextdoor, but I work on the data platform engineering team, which is kind of, they sit right next to the data science, and basically we provide the platform for data scientists or analytics to be run on whatever platform or cluster or whatever. So essentially the idea is that we just provide a platform and we just manage read and writes, data streaming in, make sure that that's all up to date and comes in at a certain time, I guess.
Yeah. And it's pretty important too, because of the fact that this isn't just, some scheduled cron job. This is like essentially a scaled and layered thing in which, millions of data points basically have to go from being like, off of the events on Nextdoor. If you think about like millions of people are on that app every single day, and then they have to essentially, all that data has to flow through back to where you can actually get access to it.
Yeah, we do. There's a science. I think I like to summarize my job as like essentially a file read and a file write. We're guaranteeing a write in one spot as quick as possible and as accurately as possible. That's, I think, what data engineering boils down to. It sounds easy, but there's a lot of like little I guess, what's the word I'm looking for? There's a lot of devil in the details, there's like a lot of compression algorithms that you can use. There's a lot of like file formats, there's a lot, what types of aggregation, how do you leverage memory over compute and stuff like that to sort of optimize querying engines, basically.
Yeah, no, I think the level of detail is pretty astounding. And it's pretty interesting too, because it's a lot of times it's a performance challenge. Like, what was the hardest thing that you worked on at, let's say Nextdoor, or just like in general in your engineering career?
So I guess I'd say probably the hardest challenge I had was not Nextdoor, but my last place. I worked at this place called the Next Exchange, and they do programmatic advertising, and so. Essentially they have, like ad servers bidding around the world. And this is like on the order of, terabytes of data coming in, flooding around from like, I think 7,000 or 5,000 ad servers across the world, piping into one big data processing cluster. And so we had to, build a job that I think processed 300 gigabytes every 10 minutes or something like that. So it's like a MacBook hard drive in every like 5 minutes filling up. I think that was the stats, and you had to be able to count that because and that was it because like one log file could be like that, however small it was like maybe allocated a few cents in revenue, but you had to count that over trillions and trillions of events.
Yep. Yeah.
And to be able to figure out was yeah, pretty hard project.
Because the things that you take for granted when you don't have that many events is like you can throw it on AWS or whatever, and you can just
Yeah.
have the log there, and then it'll be fine. And then maybe in a year you look at it and like, wow, it's like a gigabyte of data, and then you can delete it or like store it somewhere. But for this, it's like, no, it's actually like 1 trillion gigabytes and costing us $50,000.
Yeah, I think the cluster we had like 40 terabytes of memory. Sorry, so 600 terabytes of memory, which was like ludicrous. And so like I think the cluster cost like a few $1,000,000 to run per month or something like that, and it's just legitimately insane how much. So the time to leverage that was pretty important. Overall, an interesting problem. I still keep in touch with some of the guys there, and they're still running apparently. So good to know that I did something right.
Yeah, code is still being maintained. They're still going like, oh my God, Ivan wrote this. No, I'm just kidding.
Definitely.
I feel like that's what I leave in my wake, though. It's just like a bunch of Git blames.
I mean, it is all legacy code starts when you after you leave. So like it's being created all the time.
Yeah, that's definitely true. I can't imagine. I think I just dumped all my SQL queries from Nextdoor into like one page, and I was like, "Here you go. Like, you guys want it? I mean, I'm happy to add titles to all these things and how much effort I think they take to run, but I just don't feel like a lot of the, at least in analytics, that a lot of that gets saved unless it's like presentable, and in engineering, like not the case. It's like all that stuff gets saved no matter what because you're building something. I mean, you want it so that it actually does get maintained as well, or like not maintained, but just has longevity because you actually did something that was very crucial for the business. It's like engineers are they get paid well, and we're data science engineers are expensive in the Valley, so I guess that's the reason for it. So thanks for coming on. I guess I didn't want to totally just ask you just about Nextdoor and your past experience, but I'd love to like dive into like a project that you thought was just like something that you worked on the side. Because I remember when we talked about this, it was on the Toronto real estate market, and this is like an interesting kind of ecosystem. It's different from the US, and I'd love for you to just dive in on like
sure. Okay. So the Toronto real estate market is a little different from the real estate here in Toronto, in America. In Ontario, Toronto specifically, there is no like Redfin or Zillow, so there's no like public listing of houses that are available on the market to be sold. There's no like API that you can query. There is, but it's owned by the Toronto Real Estate board there, and they consider that data to be proprietary and their own data. And so to be able to access that data, you need to be a licensed real estate agent or a licensed real estate broker. And then you have which is a pretty high barrier to entry, significantly higher than the barrier to entry here. If you're just browsing Zillow, you online, it's like easy as a few clicks, right?
It's like an MLS aggregator almost.
Yeah.
There's tons of different MLS services in the US, and then a bunch of different real estate companies can get the capacity to just aggregate them together. And,
So that data isn't public in Toronto, so it makes a sort of, it gives a lot of people an incomplete picture.
Yep.
Essentially, coming, take an example of a couple of close family friends of mine who, their process in buying a house.
Yep.
They find a real estate agent. The real estate agent signs onto this platform. Well, before that, the people tell the real estate agent, we're looking for a house of this size, this much, this many bedrooms, this many bathrooms. This is our price range. The real estate agent then signs onto this private listing, site, and then, filters does a little search, browse, and then sort of manually says, okay, like these are the subset of houses that I think you'd be interested in, and then forwards them via email or a link or something like that to show them the house, and then they make a decision from that. There's that to me sounds like has always been like, it's kind of tough because you're fed an incomplete picture and it's not within your control.
Yeah.
Right. You don't know the history of the house. You don't know what you don't see. And so, as for me, having just recently moved to the Bay and looking to get into, the real estate market in Toronto, I kind of struggled with that sort of control of information.
Yeah, definitely. It's
and so,
do they have like an internal Zillow then? So I guess the first thing that I wanted to clarify was, is this board of, I know it's not board of directors, but is it a like government entity, or is it
no,
like?
I think it's a private company. It's a
private
company. Yeah,
So
it's a private company.
a private company owns all of the data on the real estate in Canada.
I presume so, yes.
Okay. That sounds kind of strange, right? Because that seems like.
Yeah, I don't know the normalization of what it is in the rest of Canada, but I know that's definitely the case in Toronto. So that makes things pretty hard. So like, yeah, it's the main issue is, now we want to, so I guess going back to that, so like I want to get into the real estate market. And because of that, I want to be able to see a complete picture of what the real estate market looks like.
Yeah.
I want to see, like what is the average of houses, price of houses over the last 5 years, and how does this house in this particular neighborhood, compare with the median price in that house. I want to see, a little bit of game theory that goes on. If a house is, listed at certain price, but it's been on the market for 15 days, how likely are you to say, what if I say give an offer of $20,000 under asking, what's their likelihood of saying yes? I want to be able to paint a picture, or at least make an informed decision to be able to sort of go into a potential negotiation, with armed with that information, so that I can sort of make better decisions, because it is a significant investment that you want to make.
You can't even do that in the US, right? Like you don't even know how much it costs until after all the negotiations go through. Because someone could be like 1 million for this home, and then someone else could be like 950 for this in cash, and then they decide to take the cash offer because it's all guaranteed, even though $1 million was like maybe the market actual price. It's like a package of deals.
So that's the one thing that's unique about this whole system in Toronto, is that the sold price is listed. So you see the history of the transaction. It was listed at $950,000, taken off the delisted, then put on the market back for 930. There was an offer pending, at 910, and then it says sold for 910 or something like that, or offer pending, and then it just kind of disappears, delisted again. So you can kind of see the transaction and the sold price, which I think is a little different than here. And I guess that's why they are the Toronto Real Estate Board is super up in arms about like not releasing that data to the public, or spoiler alert, they're super anal about like keeping that data private for themselves and for real estate agents. And so like they're trying to perpetuate the system that it's like an incomplete picture.
I can see that.
So
Yeah, I think the general, it kind of seems like it's shrouded in just mystery, right? Like I
Yeah.
wouldn't, because I take it for granted of Zillow and Redfin, like it's surprising to go into a place that's, very similar to the US in many ways as Canada,
Hmm.
and then just suddenly you're playing like
Stonewalled.
offers against like shadow banker or
Yeah.
something.
Yeah. Yeah. So I
And
guess that's
yeah,
yeah, that's been the sort of the goal for this sort of side project. I want to sort of get a sense of what the market for housing prices are in in particular neighborhoods that I'm interested in, that I know that are of high value or undervalued. I want to be able to say, okay, if I see a listing that comes up with five that's as of 5 hours ago, posted for 600,000. I know, and it's been listed, taken off the market and listed for 15 days, and then taken off the market 3 times. I know that I can go $50,000 under asking, and they would be willing to sell. Like if I can sort of, get that into and notify me, as opposed to me scrolling through hundreds and hundreds of listings,
yeah,
and then if I'm able to surface those sort of insights in terms of listings that come up, I think I would be able to make a little better informed decision on a significant investment of that is a house and whatnot, because that's hundreds of thousands of dollars, right?
yeah, that's true. In terms of how much you're betting in, and then so how would you go about doing this, right? Because it sounds like these are all nice to haves, but like, is it possible?
Yeah, so I guess it all starts with the data. You have to have data, and you have to have a data source. And so there are a bunch of you know aggregate sites that sort of do this, sort of surface this data in a how do you say it, in a secondary way. Like they get the data from, they pull the data from this private API, and then they surface it in their sort of nice UI, and then there's like a paywall to get into it.
Yep.
um, there's that's there's a bunch of sites that do that. I think Zoocasa is one of them. Realtors.ca is another. And so like we're just looking at this data and essentially scraping that for all the listings and their housing prices and whatnot.
Yeah.
Obviously have to have some responsible scraping, so like the scraping does take time. But then once you have that, your source of truth becomes an address or a lat long, and then that sort of, from that you can see, okay, what other houses have been listed with this exact address over, after you've built up a repository of 200,000 listings,
Yep.
over the last 10 years. How many, you can group by the address, and then you can, from that you can basically see a transaction history, and then from there, I guess that's sort of the step one in trying to gather insights. You're building a transaction history, and then after that, I guess the second goal is to sort of build on targeting. And so you see uh, how do sort of target tags with it. How many houses, like, does this house have 2 bedrooms, 2 baths? How does it have a garage? How many square feet is it?
Yep.
You know, that means it should be in a price range of 700 to 900,000.
Yeah.
But it's, and then sort of go there, and then take into all these other factors of neighborhood, of et cetera, et cetera. I don't know.
Yeah. Do you think neighborhoods are actually a good feature? Because the way that I was thinking about was like neighborhoods are like arbitrarily defined, right? I mean, generally they should be similar in some sort of characteristic that like one house and two houses out of the same neighborhood are like similar in location and proximity to each other. But if you have one, like house on one side of the neighborhood, and then you have another house on the other side of the neighborhood, they're probably closer to the house in the other neighborhood because it's closer to them than
Uh-huh.
each other, right? And so you get this like weird idea of just like geospatial location that
Uh-huh.
we just randomly bucket into them when like literally, if you take like the 10 closest houses to you, that's
Yeah.
probably a better guess, right?
That's interesting. I I don't think it's that sort of stark in like in Toronto. Like I think crime rates are pretty low throughout the city, aside from a couple pockets here and there. And then so I don't. I think it is more of a natural gradient in terms of like falling, like going between houses and the transition. It's not
Yeah.
like some of the places I've seen in like DC or New York, where you take you're walking down one street and you take a turn and all of a sudden it's like night and day here. It's
Yep.
super bougie and then all of a sudden it becomes super sketch. Like I don't think it becomes, it's like that in terms of neighborhood boundaries or sort of differences of a block or two. It's much more like smoothed out, I think, in Toronto. So I don't. This is news to me because I don't really particularly look at like classifications in at least in my mind. I don't think I would classify specifically by neighborhood. It's I think my source of truth comes down to lat longs and the areas that I know are considered good neighborhoods. Like Trinity Bellwoods is a very nice neighborhood in Toronto that is considered up and coming. A lot of young workers are sort of migrating. Yuppies are
Yeah.
migrating to that area and buying houses there. North Toronto has a very long history of a strong Jewish community and like a lot of um, uh, African American influence there as well, and stuff like that. So I don't know. It's the you don't have to be so hard on the neighborhood boundaries. I think is my point.
Yeah. But at some point, it's like realtors always say like location, 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 right? So it's like at some point, like in some way abstracting it in terms
Huh.
of neighborhood. Sometimes, if they don't go neighborhood, then they'll do like similar characteristics around them, right? But like a lot of the time, it's like if you were to just take away all of the attributes of the neighborhood, like so if you just um, had some way to effectively have the same school, crime rate,
Uh-huh.
let's say, what else is there that influences like number of restaurants in your area, you know,
Uh-huh.
like number of new houses being built. If that was the same across, a certain number of houses within that neighborhood, then it wouldn't really matter. Then you could use the neighborhood as a good, feature, right? But if that wasn't true across all these different houses, like if the variance was really high, then it would be bad to use like the neighborhood as a feature in that case, right? So it's like, how do you basically encapsulate all those ideas to basically create like a location, feature that maybe is like, so it's like maybe this is higher dimensional than we can actually think, right? So that's why we use those attributes of like crime rate, restaurants, stuff like that in your location. Because a lot of the times it's like, I think there's two ways to look at it. There's one way from like the feature side of like looking at the attributes of the location, or there's one way of just putting it in like in a black box and just saying, this is like neighborhood, this is a house, and these are like the similar characteristics of all these other houses that are near this house, and we're going to use that as like feature 201 area or something like that. So it's like neighborhoods are one way to abstract it, but it might not be good. And there's like no way to really tell unless you have other data to like back it up, right? Because like what is like the actual reason for why a house goes for more or less, right? It's like why why is it that you can walk into a certain house and just be like, this is gonna cost in your mind like 1.1 million? I'm saying this number because I live in San Francisco. They probably don't all cost, this much, obviously.
Houses in Toronto are up to 1.1 million now.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. But that's the thing is like, you don't really know. And like, I think it's because real estate agents have used this the whole time. So they just take, like recently sold, they do that whole process called the estimate. I don't know what it's called now,
Oh
but
yeah, yeah. I've seen it on Zillow, the home
yeah,
value
yeah, where
estimator
they
or
like,
whatever.
they take three comparable houses and then they measure the actual price of your home. And yeah, I don't know. I think I think being able to, I think for you to actually be able to predict the actual like demand of like if it is it going for 50,000 below or is it 50,000 more, like that
Uh-huh.
probably takes in more outside factors as well, right? Because I think it's, you know, it's not just historical and it's not just some linear regression you can plot, right? Because a lot of the times it's based on the economy. Like even thinking about in our situation now, right? There's probably people that are getting steals because we're
Yeah.
in a recession, but people need to still sell their home. I'm
Yeah.
actually not sure. Do you have any kind of pulse on like what it's like right now? Um,
So I've been trying to keep up as much as possible with the financial news that's been going on amidst this whole COVID-19 epidemic. But from I know that like Canada's been doing the same as America has. You know, we've the Fed, the Bank of Canada has lowered the interest rates to some obscene amount, like something like 0.5% or 0.25% or something like that.
yeah,
And um, in that, the a lot of mortgages and mortgage rates are now significantly lower, and which should hopefully incentivize people from buying a house. But I think a lot of it is currently a lot of the interest rate I've seen for mortgages has not really decreased just yet, because a lot of those interest rates are actually are sort of buoyed up by, you know, a lot of refinancing demand. So there's
yeah.
like a lot of people asking for refinancing of their mortgages, and so that sort of
It pushes
meeting.
like the number
Yeah.
up because they can't even handle all
Yeah.
the requests, right? Because
Yeah.
they're like,
Yeah.
yeah, let's refinance this recession. Let's
Yeah,
go.
which is so I'm a little like I'm kind of curious to see how the market goes. I think, you know, I think this epidemic is this is a whole nother topic, but I think this epidemic is like going to be the kickstart of a sort of a not long-ish recession where, you know, we don't we're not going to be as active as we have been in the last, you know, 6-7 years, in terms
Active?
of
What do you mean by
well,
active?
like a bullish market. You know,
Oh,
we're
bullish.
not going to see. Yeah.
Yeah,
I think it's gonna there's going to be a lot more, you know, reserved spending, and so that when you don't spend as much, then that's when the real estate market kind of feels the pain, and then that's when sort of housing prices drop eventually. And so that's sort of
yeah.
what I'm um, looking forward to. Well, I don't. I'm not. Let me rephrase that. I'm not looking forward to recession, but I'm looking forward to the housing sort of prices as they come down to possibly come down to realistic levels for
For us to buy,
people,
maybe.
or yeah, our generation to buy, because Toronto actually has a pretty similar situation as San Francisco. Like the you know, like how a one bedroom condo in Toronto can fetch up to like $700,000, and the rent you can fetch on that is like not even San Francisco levels. So the mathematics of it don't really work out
If the
to
price to rent ratio is like pretty similar at this point.
yeah, pretty similar. Just
Yeah.
because I think the sort of the income is a little bit lower on average in Canada, but it's also Toronto also struggles doesn't struggle with like San Francisco does, because San Francisco is like literally a box. You know, you're
Yeah.
bound to a 7 mile by 7 mile box. In Canada, you know, we have in Toronto specifically, we have like you
Yeah.
can
Sprawl.
there is huge amounts of sprawl,
Yeah.
and then there's also like no zoning laws, so like condos are being built up like on the year. And like I remember like going I you know, left Toronto for about 3 years, and then I came back, and then when I took a look at when I was coming back, I took a look at the skyline. I'm like, 20 to 30% of all of these buildings I were not here when I left, and it was just like mind blowing. Like
Yeah.
thousands of condo you know, units are coming up, but the price is still like continually increasing, and I don't understand why that's the case, and like it just doesn't meet demand, and I'm so perplexed why. So
Well,
I've
might
been
have
thinking that
popped
there was a
now,
bubble.
right? Like this is
I
the same with Vancouver. I mean, Seattle had a ton of industries, so that made
Yeah,
sense. Um,
yeah.
but it seemed like a lot of people were moving into the cities in the past 10 years in general, as tech kind of like boomed and created these like second cities after San Francisco, just because it was like a cheaper place to live, even.
Maybe, but like the number of, I don't know. I think the number of people that want to live in like want to have a white picket fence in a backyard and stuff like that is not is like pretty high. So like you might live in a condo or downtown Toronto for like the first 5 years, but there's a very sort of heavy incentive to sort of, okay, once you've done that in your 30s, you want to sort of migrate out to the suburbs to sort of have your
Yeah,
house and
yeah,
maybe I'm just like spinning up whatever fairy tale stories that I've heard. I don't have any data to back this up, so we can
well, they say the American dream is dead, right? I mean, I watched this movie, American Factory, recently. That's on Netflix, and it's about essentially like uh, like workers that worked at GE that got laid off that were now working for like a Chinese company called Fuyao. It won the Oscar for best
Okay,
documentary.
I did not.
Basically, yeah, it was crazy. And one woman was like, I was making like 26 an hour at GE, or like 32 an hour at GE back in 2001, and then like now I make $15 an hour at Fuyao or something like that. And it just kind of sums up
Jeez.
how that middle class is kind of like dead in terms of like getting a nice house, with
Uh-huh.
a white picket fence. Instead, it's more like this whole paycheck to paycheck thing. And we're seeing that here, even with coronavirus. Like, it doesn't seem like real estate is realistic for the masses anymore. It's like a luxury, and like you can keep on moving out basically to like attain this luxury, but like, I mean, I don't know. I don't think
Yeah.
it's like something that
I
is. I think it's not even like it's a fallacy almost, because it seems like every other country has created these high-rise condos.
uh-huh.
Like just look at China, Europe, like all these places, people just end up living in condos. They downsize.
I guess so. I am aware that a lot of the condos are like Toronto, like foreign investment, and so
Yeah.
you
So
have
they're like,
a lot of investors, buying up these condos and then like just renting them out because as investment vehicles. But I know that's been sort of tamped down with I think some ridiculous tax of like 15 or 20% for a foreign buyer tax.
yeah,
So if you buy it and you don't live in that as a foreigner, you are going to get taxed some significant margin such that your profit margins aren't worthwhile, which is
invest.
why I guess it just doesn't make sense to me that even then, amidst that, there's still so much demand in Toronto. But we'll see. This is I think, you and I are just both trying to adjust to this the pandemic that has
Yeah,
gone on for like basically, like I guess the last 3 months, but it's, you're only starting to really see the effects of it in the last 2 weeks, more or less, and
yeah,
now we'll see what happens with the financial market, because that sort of is yet to be told. There's a bailout, but how effective is that? That remains a different question.
yeah. And like, how are we getting this money? Like, I mean, I don't know about you, but I think I'm getting this money because I am working on a startup, and like, I probably, I don't know, I probably qualify for this $1,200. But I'm also just like, how is the government ever going to send me $1,200? Like, if healthcare took like 2 years or something and then failed, like, how are they going to give me 1,200? Like, how does the government? I mean, they do it with your taxes, I guess, but like, I don't know. I just like I never thought this day would come, and now
It's all just credit history. It's just the promise on a piece of paper, man. That's what's keeping uh, the backbone of the American economy is a IOU piece of paper in the future.
yeah,
That's
it
how I
doesn't
like to think about it.
make much sense though. Like, I mean, okay, yeah, I get it. I was thinking about it today, and I realized how like we can keep on printing money because America's like promised to return it and credit is so good, but at the same time, it's I don't know, it's pretty crazy, and I think yeah, I mean, I was looking at the real estate prices, or sorry, the rental prices in San Francisco, and they look like they've gone down because my girlfriend and her sister were trying to find a place a month ago in San Francisco, and we looked at like a bunch of places, and like there's this, shitty like 3 bedroom for 5,000, and kind of by
Mhm.
where you live actually in the Mission Potrero area, and then there was like a 2 bedroom at Dog Patch for like 4,500 or like $5,000. So this is all crazy. Then I look like last week, and then suddenly it's like 3,500 for a 2 bedroom, like in the same area, and it's like 3,000. And so you can see it sinking. One, because like people like her are like they stop looking because it's like, okay, it's not a good time to move. But at the same time, it's like also Airbnb, like Airbnb is hurting so bad that all their hosts are having to put their like actual apartments on long-term rental sites, and they're like flooding the entire market with supply. And so
Interesting.
yeah, we're
That
seeing just
is.
like a huge supply of general like um, housing, and like we actually just found someone for our room. There's an
Uh-huh.
old maid that came back, right? And so I
Right.
live in like a 5-6 bedroom place, and then I got a call from Airbnb from a person asking me to like talk to them urgently about not closing down like the calendar dates for the room because I don't know. I think they're just hurting. Like they need to call all their like salespeople are like they need to call their leads. They need to figure out what's going on. Like they need to like
Damn.
make sure that they can maintain liquidity, and as people are just like closing or taking their listings off Airbnb entirely.
I did not realize that. Holy shit. I know, I guess I knew that Airbnb was like, it's a gig economy. So in this kind of time when like the service industry is completely like down, like hit hard, I
Yeah.
assumed that, like Airbnb would be hurting. But I didn't realize, I didn't sort of make that step and like think like the consequence of that is that, the 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 most financially incentivized decision for all of these Airbnb hosts is to put them on long-term rentals, and so now all of a sudden you have a flooded, like, you're flooded with supply of
Yep.
like prices, and therefore the rent is gonna. Interesting. I might I might just take a look, get that Craigslist bot going again. I think you and I talked about this like way back
Yeah.
when we first started. What was it? I think, right, because I think uh, I messaged Scott, which is a coworker of both of us as a Nextdoor, and
Yes.
he referred me to. I asked him what places are there to live in San Francisco, and he referred me to a post actually written by you about all the housing. So go
Yeah.
check that out, Jay Feng,
I like that.
Medium.com article.
Yeah. Please check it out if you're looking for a place in San Francisco. Definitely got some traction off of that. But yeah, I mean, I have always wanted to build the apartment listings newsletter, even after I failed at the real estate listings newsletter, um, because I still think that finding cheap apartments is like useful, but at the same time, like I feel like there's a ton of scams on Craigslist. Like there's a surprising amount
Mhm.
of just like very, very low key scams that are happening, and like you can't. They're getting smarter about it. It's not just like 3 bedroom in Soma for $1,000. It's not like that stupid anymore. It's like 3 bedrooms in Soma for like $4,000, and so it's like a little bit below market. And like, and then you go to the description, and then it's just like a plain block of text where they want you to like email. And then I saw this actually the other day on Hacker News, where basically you email, you talk to them about it, and then basically they send you to like they're like, oh, actually book on Airbnb, and then you click on the link, and it's like a fake Airbnb link where they faked it by like
Wow.
it's like I don't know how they did it, but it was like a www something dot and then like maybe a subdomain, but it can't be like an exact subdomain because Airbnb would definitely have that. But it's like it looks just like Airbnb. And you have to check the URL params to like actually figure out that you've been fished. Um,
Wow,
So,
that's actually
yeah, it's
that's
pretty crazy.
terrible. But
It's pretty
like,
bad. Yeah.
actually, damn scammers. I guess the whole scam artist thing is always going to be a whack-a-mole. You fluff out one, like stomp out one method, and they'll always find another. That is crazy though. I didn't think about
Yeah, and things just
that.
like they're taken from websites, and so it's like hard to tell like exactly what is a good deal sometimes and what
Yeah,
is a scam. It's like you now have to first run like a scam algorithm or a scam classifier on your listings before
yeah.
you can actually run like a good deals classifier. But a lot of the times those things will point to the same thing, right?
Yeah.
So
The
yeah,
I would use like Facebook, the Facebook groups and stuff like that. Those
yeah,
postings, those
this-
listings are pretty nice. Um because, like real people do post them. There's still the occasional scam and like whatnot, but like the tagging on those posts are pretty few and are limited. So you'll have a price, but you won't have a location, you won't have a city, you won't have anything. So it becomes kind of hard to say, like filter for, I want a house in Soma or the Mission or
yeah,
Pacific
yeah.
Heights for this much, or like that, something like that. So
Very manual. Yeah,
yeah, it becomes manual. I've always wanted to sort of build something on Facebook, but like Craigslist is still the easiest way. There's a lat long. I determine if it's in the box, the bounding box that I want it to be in, and
yep,
then that's literally it. It's and then there's a price tag. There is so how many bedrooms, et cetera, and then like it notifies me, and then that's it. Um,
yeah. So many startups have failed trying to disrupt Craigslist, and it's like maybe they just realize they will always win because they have liquidity, and even though they have a shitty UI, I mean, it's not even that shitty. It's like everyone's gotten used to it now. It just looks like a newspaper. It's like
If it ain't
pretty,
broke, don't fix it, man.
it really,
I
yeah,
think,
that's really the motto.
especially since like Craigslist's burn rate is so low,
Yeah,
right? Like they've what been on 50, like they worked out of like, they've been at 20 engineers for like forever, and then
yeah,
recently like scaled up to like 60 or 70,
yeah.
which
And they
is
make money off of like such a small percentage. It's like they make money off of like apartments in New York City, and like that's it. Or
I
maybe they're monetizing more now.
I think they're monetizing through advertisements or something like that. Oh wait,
What really?
no, no,
Oh.
no, no. I'm wrong on that. I can't remember how they monetize, but it's just like it doesn't really matter because your burn rate's so damn low that it's so easy for you to like be afforded all of these margins.
It's a good bootstrap business that I'm not actually sure is actually bootstrapped,
Yeah,
but double check that.
uh,
Probably
and
is.
you
Yeah.
and at the end of the day, like user base is always going to be the hardest thing to get, right? You're
Yeah.
never going to like it's you have to have something very incentivizing for people to leave a certain platform that already does 90% of what you want for 100%, like
Yeah.
what you desire, right? Like
Yeah.
that 10% is going is huge in terms of like barrier to entry, and I think that's why Craigslist has stuck around and like passed the test of time,
Yeah.
especially in the valley.
Awesome. Well, I think we got through a good amount of stuff. I uh, am gonna have to let you go now too, actually, because I have another meeting and call. But is there
Word.
anything you like to promote on like potentially like a Toronto real estate blog in the future, or
Well, I can't really promote anything I've been doing on the Toronto Real Estate Board because technically scraping is illegal.
yeah,
So I don't scrape data.
it's not great to do this.
So or like and that and I can't publish the data. So the unfortunate bit is that most of my research is going to stay.
Maybe
Uh,
you can like stumble upon it or something, and then just be like, I found this somewhere on the internet. So yeah, this is great. Good. A
Gotta
random
scrub
link
the
on
history of
Google.
this podcast. Then we're gonna have to erase everything that I've said in the last if we're going to do that.
Toronto police
um,
into my podcast, this podcast. This
Don't sell yourself short,
pod-
Jake. Don't sell.
All right, cool. Dude, thanks for coming on. I'll
No worries,
probably
man.
see you soon.
Yeah, word.
Bye.
Later.